Well, hello there, my studio teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast, your weekly shout out of solidarity from me, Christina Whitlock. I am so happy that you are here today, and I just want to say that if you gain anything valuable from today's show, I would love to welcome you into the Patreon community, where you can join other influential teachers in supporting my work and each other for just $3. Details on that can be found at christinawhitlock.com/Patreon. And now, on with today's show. You are listening to episode 160 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Cheers to fueling recital participation with FOMO. It's that time of year, friends. Recital season is looming ahead, and many teachers find themselves questioning how to get that one family to actually commit to performing in the recital this year. Have you been there? You're in good company. Many of us have gone rounds with families who don't seem to value the experience enough to attend, no matter how many justifications we throw their way. In fact, just this week, a teacher friend from my Patreon community messaged me, exasperated by one of those families who had declared that they will, once again, not be participating in this year's recital. Right? It's something I hear over and over from teachers this time of year. Like, why won't my families prioritize the studio recital? So, as always, I'm not here because I have the single perfect solution for you, but I do have a lot of experience with these matters, and I have come to some perspectives and solutions that I think are worth sharing. The problem here is really twofold. The first question we have to address is, does it matter if every family attends your recitals? Some might say that this is one of those things where, with age and experience, comes wisdom. The truth of the matter is, there will occasionally be families who choose not to attend recitals for whatever reason. You need to determine for yourself how much mental energy you are willing to give that matter. Now, that's a question only you can answer. I've known teachers for whom it matters so much that they implement a policy where not attending a recital is grounds for dismissal from the studio. That's a little extreme for my vibe these days, but it definitely works for some. Look, I hope you are really proud of your recitals or whatever studio events you hold. I hope you are so proud of those experiences that you do want your students to attend. This is not me telling you to become apathetic to the whole thing and say, come or don't come, that's up to you. But I do think that there is middle ground to be found here. Like, I don't want to become calloused and passive aggressive if a family opts out of a recital for whatever reason. But I also don't want to be kept awake at night obsessing over why this family never makes piano a priority. Again, middle ground, right? This all falls under that pesky category of accepting what is in your control and what is not, right? You ultimately have no say over how a family spends their time. This ties right into my zero energy list, which is 3 things I refuse to spend mental energy on. If you haven't heard me talk about my zero energy list, then you need to go check out episode 76. That is the number one downloaded episode of this podcast for a reason, my friends. So, yeah, okay. You do not have control over a family's decision to attend or not attend your recital. Perseverating over their decision is not a fruitful use of your time. But there are several things in this situation you do have control over. Namely, you have control over how you present these opportunities to your students and their families, and you have control over your reactions to their responses. I'm going to say that again. You have control over how you present the opportunity and how you respond to their communications. We have to stay focused on those two elements, friends, or we are going to make ourselves miserable. Which really brings us to the second part of this recital attendance dilemma today. What can we do to communicate the value of recital participation? Traditionally, what do we do to communicate these events? We send emails with carefully crafted verbiage. Maybe we send text messages. We'll talk about them during lessons. And maybe we create flyers. I don't know. All of those things are great, but there is more that we can do. And a lot of it is actually easier than any of those things. This, my friends, is where the magic of the 21st century notion of FOMO comes into play. Just in case you don't know, FOMO is an acronym for fear of missing out. I read recently that the fear of missing out holds more power over us than the fear of failure. Isn't that interesting? I don't know that we can count that a measured statistic just yet, but I do believe, at least for some people, the fear of missing out is a mighty force. I can say this from experience because your friend Christina here is highly motivated by FOMO. In fact, maybe there's a reason we're talking about this today when the MTNA National Conference begins on Saturday, and I will not be there. More on that one later, but back to FOMO in your studio. The thing I want you to ponder today is how can you make your studio events or even your lesson experience itself something that people are going to miss if they are not there? How can you establish your recital or whatever as a thing to be missed? I say this about supplemental group classes all the time. Like, if you want students to make supplemental group classes a priority, you need to focus your efforts on having one or two really great classes. If the students have a good time and if the parents believe it to be a valuable experience, those classes will begin to work their way up the priority list on their own. So, in regards to recitals, it's of utmost importance that you consider the event itself. Like, what aspects of your recital can you play up as something that people will not want to miss? In episode 155, when I talked about studio traditions, I mentioned that, for better or for worse, my students tell me that they do not want to miss that post performance dessert spread. Now, that's not necessarily what I want my legacy to be, but I am confident that there are plenty of elements to my recitals that leave them feeling like they are missing out if they are not there. If you want to see a rundown of all my recital related content, you can visit christinawhitlock.com/recital because I've collected all of my recital related episodes there for you. So let's get down to the nitty gritty of fueling the recital FOMO, shall we? I have talked about this one several times here on the podcast, but I also know I have new teacher friends listening, so I'm going to say it again. I take my studio group photo at the beginning of each recital. Yes, the beginning, so I don't forget at the end. Bonus points for the fact that shirts are all still tucked in and hair bows are still in place, and no one has snuck out early. Now for the magic of the group photo. Friends, I use that studio group photo everywhere. I print a large copy of it and I frame it, and it hangs in a prominent location in my studio for the entire year. I use that photo in studio communications. It's even embedded in Google Forms that I send out when I need to collect scheduling information. I send out a holiday greeting card with, you guessed it, the group photo. I post that photo on social media a few times each year. And I mean, the list goes on, but suffice to say, I use that photo. I talk about it like it's a thing. I'll announce presenting our 2024 studio photo. I include taking the photo on the recital schedule. I will say the recital begins at 4, students should arrive at 3:45, and the studio photo will be taken at 3:55 or whatever. If you make it a thing, studio parents will slowly begin to make it a thing too. Now, I know this sounds so silly, but I promise you, friends, parents do not like their kids to be missing from group photos. They will do anything to get Johnny to soccer practice on team picture day. This can slowly evolve into the same thing. Like, you just have to be patient while the culture changes. And it's up to you to first establish your studio photo as a thing. These same strategies can be said for the recital itself. Okay, can you place a recital countdown somewhere in your studio, whether that's just on a dry erase board or a cute printable or whatever? It could actually be there all year long, not just during recital season. Like, imagine in your studio, you had a sign hanging that said 52 weeks until our next recital. And that countdown ticked down to 1 week and then to 0 weeks. I mean, that's got to build some level of anticipation, right? And when those students who aren't participating see those visual cues, when their parents get well crafted emails talking about all the excitement surrounding this big studio event, and they know they're not going to be there, don't tell me that one's not going to start to wear them down, friends. It will. And honestly, even if it doesn't, you will at least know that there's nothing more you can do. The real issue here is this: your studio families need to view your recitals or whatever event as things that are designed for them to be part of. Many parents still hold a pretty traditional, like bland perspective on what a recital is. They don't see them as group activities. They just think of their kids showing up to play. So they don't think anyone is going to miss them if they are not there. They don't think they are missing out on anything by not being there. They don't think of the learning experience of watching other students play or skills of learned of being a good audience member. They don't see them as opportunities to bring joy to others through their musical skills. But you can help them feel this way just by being intentional in your studio communications. Do you have a Facebook or an Instagram page for your studio? If you have permission from students and parents to share videos, then start posting recital countdown videos for a week or two leading up to the performance. Say, here's a sneak peek at what Sally has been preparing for Sunday's recital. Try one that says, Billy is preparing for his first ever piano recital. I'm so proud of him for working hard and being excited to share the gift of music with our audience. Like, if you really care about making your recitals a big deal, Maybe you can even make a dedicated page on your website just for recitals. You can include photos, links to past performances, copies of the programs, award recipients, and that kind of thing. I mean, that again just establishes this as a major studio event and not just something you offer to anyone who happens to be free. Then you can link those pages along with your studio photo in all of your communications, even like many months in advance. Like you could keep a line at the end of studio emails that just says, save the date. Our studio recital is Sunday, April 28th. Check out last year's highlights at mystudio.com/recital23 or whatever. Now, again, with social media, post regular recital date reminders throughout the entire year. Again, I think something that said, fun fact, 109 days until our studio recital. I can't wait. I think that's very effective. Not even in just getting people to put it on their calendars, because that's its own issue, but just in keeping it on radar as a thing, right? A picture of last year's dessert spread with a caption that says, everyone's favorite post performance tradition might prove to be gold. A picture of your performance space empty, saying, in just 3 weeks, this room will be full of eager performers and the best audience members in town. Pictures of a longtime student at their first recital and then again at their most recent recital, captioned with how it started and how it's going. A video compilation of recital highlights from last year with a caption of, I can't wait to see how these students have grown this year. I mean, I could go on, but I hope these ideas get you started. Playing up the studio family aspect of watching students grow and progress each year together can be incredibly motivating for attendance. I guess this whole thing can be summed up by saying that we can't control people's calendars, nor can we control their priorities. But if recital attendance is important to you, you can control how often you talk about it. You can choose memorable moments to highlight in studio communications via email or social media or physical representations in the studio, in conversation, all of those places. Most of these ideas are simply a matter of intentionality. They aren't very much work at all. But I will say this, you have to give this stuff time to take hold. Don't expect perfect results this year. This, like so many things in our work, is a long game. You have to build the culture. It's not going to happen overnight, but I will tell you that I've been doing a lot of these things for many years, and I have hit 100% studio participation more often than not the last several years, which still kind of blows my mind. Think about what makes your recital special or fun or whatever you want it to be and play up that FOMO, my friends. And speaking of FOMO, okay, it's so true. I am going crazy over here knowing that I am not going to be with my teacher friends next week at the MTNA National Conference. For many of you, I'm sure it doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you've never gone to a conference or maybe you tried one and didn't have a great time, I mean, I get that. But I count on things like MTNA to bolster my connection to this profession, and I am really sad to not be there. So, I was thinking, how about all of us who aren't going to be at MTNA get together online? I'm even willing to put some work into it, okay? Here's what I'm proposing. The very first presentation I ever gave at an MTNA national conference was back in 2016. That was San Antonio, and it was called the Varsity Musicians Playbook. This session takes research from team sports psychology and it applies it to our music studios. Now, we all know one of the biggest frustrations in music teacher world is this struggle with students who always seem to choose sports over the studio, right? Well, the solution runs deeper than what we're often told. It's not actually just about the social aspect of sports. There's more to it, and I've discovered lots of lessons that we can apply to our studios. And even 8 years after debuting this session in San Antonio, it continues to be one of the most frequently requested presentations from music teacher groups who bring me in to speak. So I've decided it's time to refresh that session a bit and bring in some of the information that I've never been able to include due to time constraints. So, on Tuesday, March 19th, I am going to offer a live online presentation of the Varsity Musicians Playbook. It will be about an hour. There's going to be a live Q&A, and registrants will have access to the replay for 6 months. If you are feeling the MTNA FOMO, or if you are just fed up feeling like you are constantly competing with sports, I encourage you to sign up for this online presentation at christinawhitlock.com/sports. Registration for the live event is $19 and it includes the hour session as well as print resources to help you apply this information to your own unique studio situation. That link will be in the show notes for today's episode, or again, you can head to christinawhitlock.com/sports. If I'm allowed to say so myself, this is a great opportunity to experience a microcosm of the conference experience with tried and true information that I am confident holds something for everyone. Okay, enough of that. It's time for a toast. Studio music teacher friends from all around the world. Today, I am raising my glass to you and all the extra effort that goes into preparing studio events like recitals. These are the things we're never taught in school, right? They're definitely things that our studio families don't factor in when they consider how much they pay us. But sometimes the smallest things make the biggest difference, right? Today, we remind ourselves of the few things in our world that are actually under our control and the many things that aren't. May we continue to get better at discerning where our energy is going. May we stop taking on burdens that don't need picking up. And may we find great pride in the services that we provide our communities. Cheers to you, my teacher friends, who truly do make this world a better place. Hear, hear. All right, teacher friends, I know that I am over time today, but will you hang around with me a few minutes for Teacher Friend of the Week? Drum roll, please. Today's Teacher Friend of the Week is Abigail Prophet. Now, you may know Abigail from the beautifully crafted resources that she creates for her business, the Whole Foundation Method. I just wanted to give her a shout today because she is hard at work on a master's degree in educational psychology while also balancing studio teaching and designing really nice resources for teachers. We were chatting the other day on Instagram and just laughing over how she and I both will find ourselves reading research for fun. Since she already has to read so much research for class, she said, "Shouldn't I want to do something else in my free time?" And I told her that she's just a true teacher through and through. Sometimes we just can't get enough learning, right? So, congrats, Abigail Prophet, on being Teacher Friend of the Week. You are doing awesome work. And to all of you, my friends, who are wearing so many different hats and carrying out so many different roles in life, I just think you're all the best. Thanks for listening to episode 160 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Check out the links in today's show notes for all things recitals, as well as that extra special online presentation of the Varsity Musicians Playbook. I am so looking forward to that one. All right, all the details can be found at christinawhitlock.com/sports. Until next week, my friends, onward and upward toward using that crazy notion of FOMO to fuel our recital participation.